Hello and welcome back to the Joyful Soul Creates. Charlotte here, and today I'm going to be making this very elegant birthday card using the Sketched Flowers stamp from Simon Says Stamp, which came in the October card kit. This card is also my design team project for the Watercolor Wednesday challenge that's starting today, and I'm actually hosting the challenge this week. It's an Anything Feminine Goes challenge, and I'll have a link to that down below if you'd like to come and join in. We'd love to see you there. So to start this card, I'm going to be stamping the large flower arrangement from the stamp set onto a black card base. And I did take a few moments to work out exactly how I wanted to position it because I didn't have a particular layout in mind when I was starting. I knew the technique I wanted to do. I knew roughly how I wanted the card to look, but I wasn't sure of the layout at that point. I then picked out one of the sentiments from the stamp set and lined that up as well so that I could stamp everything at once. Because of the size of the stamp, I did have to move my card base out of the corner of the MISTI, but I made note of the position in case I would need to put it back in and restamp it. So I made a mental note that the top corner is lined up to 1.5 inches down, and that will help me get it lined up again if need be. I'm using Simon Says Stamp clear sticky ink to stamp my flower arrangement and sentiment. This ink will stay sticky for long enough to take hold of embossing powder, and that's exactly why I used it. I'm going to be doing some heat embossing with gold embossing powder. The embossing powder I'm using is from Love from Lizi, and it's called Golden Crown embossing powder, and I'm just sprinkling it over and tapping off the excess. I know a lot of people use coffee filters to catch their embossing powder, but we don't actually get those kinds of filters here in Finland, at least that I've been able to find. So instead I'm using what's basically like a large cupcake wrapper and using that to funnel my embossing powders back in, which works just as well as the coffee filter. It's not quite as big, so you'd have more space to work with if you use the coffee filter, but it's a good alternative. I heated my embossing tool off screen, so it's nice and hot already, and then I would just go over and melt all my embossing powder, and I always love watching it change and how shiny it becomes, especially this golden crown powder. It's very pretty. And I did treat my cardstock with my anti-static powder tool before adding my powder. This makes sure it won't cling anywhere I don't want it to. So if you do that before stamping, then you can try and make sure there won't be any stray bits of embossing powder. You can also brush off any extra pieces that are where you don't want them. I then put some acrylic blocks and something heavy on top of the card base for a little while to help flatten it out a bit. I'd forgotten to wipe off the anti-static powder before that, so I just used a cloth and the heel of my hand to do that. And then I'm going to start on my painting. And I'm using the Starry colours, Gansai Tambi watercolours, in various shades of gold. And I have 2 pots of water. I have one that will be my clean water and one which will be the dirty water. So when there is paint on the paintbrush, I only put it in the blue pot. And then I will pick up clean water from the purple pot before adding any more to the paper. This, of course, is not watercolour paper, so I had to be careful with how much water I put. I didn't want to oversaturate it. And here I remembered I should probably zoom in so you can see what I'm doing a bit better. For my painting of this large flower in the centre, I'm using the colour red gold. As I said, this paint set is all different shades of gold, and I'm laying the gold into the areas I want to be the shadow areas, so close to the centre and anywhere that they overlap or there are folds in the flower. I just lay the colour down in that area and then clean my brush off and put some clean clear water in the area that I want the highlight to be, and then bring that clean water to the paint and let it move naturally. I'm not an expert watercolorist, and to be honest, a lot of the time when I do watercoloring it goes wrong and I'm not happy with it, but I'm quite pleased with how it turned out this time. And I'm working 1 petal at a time. You could probably do more at a time if you're a bit more confident, but I thought it was best to take it slow and just go a little at a time. The heat embossing does give a barrier, so the paint's less likely to run from one petal to the other, but if you haven't heat embossed, it's a good idea to not do 2 areas next to each other. So if you've painted 1 petal, skip the next one and do the one after it first whilst the original petal dries. Otherwise you may find that your paints run together and you end up with a bit of a mess. And I have had that happen numerous times because I'm too impatient and I don't wait long enough for my areas to dry. I'm afraid I went off screen for a little bit, but I will notice very soon. There we go. And just finish off the central areas of the flower. I realised afterwards I may be doing this a bit backwards. Maybe I should have had the highlights be gold and then fade to black in the shadow areas. And you could do that. You could do it either way. But florals and leaves are quite forgiving because there are so many folds and ruffles and so on that you'll often find that it looks okay even if your shadows and highlights are not entirely consistent. And actually I think I like having the gold as my shadows anyway. I think it's just a different look, but as I said, it could work either way. So once I completed my first flower with the red gold, I'm going to move on, and I decided to use the white gold to do the, I don't know if they're berries or buds, but the little round bits. These ones are so small I didn't really bother adding any shading. I just kind of carefully put the colour into each gap, and I didn't really need to pick up more paint very often either because they're so small they don't take much at all. And I decided to use them on the bigger berries as well, or buds. What do you think? Are they berries or are they buds? I guess it partly depends how you paint them as well. So here I'm putting it on the large ones, and I did put them to just one side on these, but again they were quite, even though they are bigger, they're quite small, so there wasn't really that much room for shading, and they probably ended up a bit flatter looking than I'd intended, but I don't think that matters too much. And then I'm going to paint, once I've finished those, I will paint the round flowers, and for these I think I used the blue gold for the round flowers and then the yellow gold for the pointy flower next to the big flower on the left of the big flower. Obviously, because my paints are just out of screen, I can't see to check which ones I did. I'm fairly sure I used the blue one on these round flowers because it's kind of a cooler gold than the one I used on the flower that I'll do next. And I did have to check on the stamp to see what that little bit underneath the biggest flower is, to see which flower it belongs to, so that I would know what colour to do it, because I wanted to keep my colours fairly consistent across the flowers. So if there are two flowers of the same type as these ones are, I wanted them to be the same colour. Here is where I use the yellow gold for the pointed flower, and I am fairly sure this is the yellow gold because it's warmer than the one I used on that round flower, so hopefully I did remember those the right way around, that this is the yellow and the one I did just a moment ago was the blue. And again, I'm putting the colour into the areas that I want to be my shadow areas, so in the centre and also where it overlaps or goes under the bigger flower, and then bring in some clear water and bring it towards the paint to let it blend out on its own and move how it wants to move. Doing it this way helps it be a bit looser and a bit more natural looking, and I do sometimes go back in and just go over the edge a little bit just to help it blend out a bit better, where if there were any places where the line was a bit harsh. Then I'm going to move on to the more open round flowers. I think these are actually two different kinds of flowers. The one I'm currently painting I don't think is actually exactly the same as the other two, but I decided to do them all the same colour anyway. So for these ones I'm using the champagne gold, which is a more silvery gold in a way, a paler gold, and again using the same technique. These colours do stand out really nicely against that black background and are very striking, I think, and create a very elegant card. You could try painting them on white, but you wouldn't get the same effect. They wouldn't be as impressive, I think, on white. And of course you could choose other colours to paint this. There's also a pearl colours set, which is pearlized colours, so they have yellow and red and blue and green, and those could be fun to use on black as well. They would give a very different look obviously, but it could be fun to play with those. Finally, I just needed to paint the leaves, and for the leaves I'm using the last colour from the set, which is the light gold. So I used all of the colours from the set on my image. Again, laying the paint in on one side and bringing it out with my water to finish it off. The smaller leaves were a bit more difficult to shade in this way, but I think it worked well enough. And do remember that As I said, this is for a design team project, and if you'd like to join in with our challenge, it's open for a week. Watercolor Wednesday's challenge starts, of course, on a Wednesday, and they are open for 1 week. You can enter multiple times, and every week each of the design team members will choose our favourites to be the top picks. And as I'm the host this week, then my pick is also the one who will be the winner, considered the winner of the challenge. So we'd love to see you coming to join in, and again, as I said, that will be the information for the challenge will be linked below, along with a link to my accompanying blog post and all the products used as well. So I decided I would add a frame to this card, and I'm using matte gold peel-offs from Love from Lizi for doing this. Initially I was thinking I would do a partial frame, so just on the 3 sides, and I was thinking along the lines of a card I made recently in another Creative Florals video, and I will link to that in the top right hand corner. So I was going to do it just on the 3 sides, which is why I initially laid them down just on the 3 sides, and I put them 1/4 of an inch in on each side. And I will use my craft knife to cut away the excess. I wanted the flowers to be looking as though they're over the top of the frame, so I used the craft knife again to cut off the frame as it reached the edge of the flowers. And then I decided actually I wanted to extend the frame all the way around, so I kept going with the frame and cutting off little teeny tiny pieces to fit in the gaps until I had a complete frame all the way around. It did take quite a while to do, but I think it was worth it in the end. I think it looks very good like that. Of course you could put the frame over the top, but I liked the way it looked, having the flowers come above the frame, because I think it helps give some dimension to the card. So that completes my birthday card. I hope you liked it. If you did, please do hit the like button. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below what you think of it. Have you painted on black card before? Have you played with this card kit and this stamp set? I think it's a very versatile stamp set, and I'm looking forward to playing with it a bit more. If you've not yet subscribed, you can subscribe by pressing the button on screen now, and if you press the notification bell down below, that will let you know every time I post a new video so that you won't miss any of them. There are a couple of other videos on screen that you might enjoy if you'd like to see more from me. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!